being here. I have been a fan of yours for a long time, so I'm not impartial here. But of course, I'm not necessarily being paid to be impartial. That's the difference with the BBC. But this has been a big week in terms of exposing this documentary, right?
Right. I mean, first of all, on the issue of impartial, if you're not impartial between a radical Islamic terrorist organisation and a liberal democracy, something's wrong with you, basically.
Yes, and there's something wrong with
the BBC.
People in this country.
Oh, for sure.
But so tell us what happened. When did you know that there were these connections between the son and Hamas?
I mean, look, the documentary aired at 9 o'clock on Monday evening, so I knew there was a problem at about 8:59. Okay, I mean, it's a BBC documentary, so I know, there's going to be a problem with it. I started looking at the people who were involved, because it's the kind of thing I would do, to fact check them. And I was firstly misled because the child, Abdullah, the 14-year-old, he appeared on a Channel 4 documentary about 14 months ago with a different father and a different name. It just shows you that they can basically tell you whatever they like. They can present children with whatever father, with whatever name. So I was led down the garden path a little bit because I was looking for the wrong person. At about 1 o'clock in the morning, which about 3 hours after it finished, I began to tear the mask away, and I realised that, yeah, we were looking at the son of a Hamas minister. And it's important. It took me 3 hours. And it basically means the BBC did no due diligence here whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, because it should be explained to people that you said, in terms of the BBC making this documentary, you knew there would be an issue before, because the point is, in Gaza, the only way you're going to get a documentary made in Gaza is with the help of Hamas.
Yeah, I mean, look, firstly, Hamas have full editorial control, right? I mean, you only have to ask yourself, over the last 16 months, how many Gazan journalists, and there are a lot of them standing there with cameras, have done an exclusive on the hostages, or shown us where the rockets are, or shown us where the tunnels are? Zero, none. We don't see anything that Hamas doesn't want us to see. So we know that when we're looking at something that's coming out of Gaza, we know that it's tainted, probably Hamas. The second thing is, and the reason I know is because for the last 16 months we've been finding errors in BBC reporting consistently. And this raises an institutional problem because they know that there's a problem with their reporting. And instead of, contacting the experts, because the people are finding these errors, they should be contacting us and saying, well, can you help us? Can you double check? Can you fact check? Can you verify? But instead they double down. They go into a defensive mode, elitist, supremacist attitude as if they can't possibly get it wrong, which is basically how they've made such an absolutely catastrophic mistake with this one.
Well, this is it. So you say that we should know that Hamas is going to be involved.
Yes.
How it would get through all the paperwork and, as you say, the due diligence at the BBC is so telling as to the failing of the BBC to acknowledge that Hamas basically run the show there.
For sure. I mean, look, it's not like it was just the narrator, and he was the narrator, he was the star of their show, and he's the son of the Hamas minister. So it's a sickening position where, because it's funded by us, we are paying for the BBC to promote a radical Islamic terrorist organisation and pay or give gifts to members. I mean, they must have, there must have been something passing hands here. They were following him for weeks. The cameramen, at the very least, and possibly with the producers, somebody must have known who the father was, and yet it ends up at 9 o'clock on Monday evening being shown to the people of the UK. It's an absolute disgrace.
Because you mentioned the cameraman as well. Didn't you find social media output from one of the cameramen?
But this is the thing, you see. It's not like, you're looking for a needle in a haystack. So the narrator is the son of a Hamas minister, actual Hamas government official. There were two girls on there. Their father was a Hamas, was a Gazan policeman, so he's a Hamas enforcer. Another child on there was found to be standing next to Hamas terrorists holding weapons. The cameraman had posted celebrations following the October the 7th massacres. It wasn't one thing. They did not bother to look at all.
Well, here's the interesting thing. I've been following your work online for years now.
Right.
And the fact that it's you and a few other people as well have identified different parts of this documentary that are doing the work here, that have been doing the work to try and hold the BBC to account for years. Yeah. There's this idea that obviously that Jews run the world. And the more that I got involved within the sort of pushback against certain narratives, the more I realized was it's you living in North London, and it's this single mum living in Muswell Hill, and it's a teacher, and it's an estate agent, and it's me who's a comedian.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the insanity of it, is it's taking just a bunch of normal people to hold this institution, or to try to hold this institution to an account.
Yeah, I mean, look, firstly, the taking down of the documentary is just a first step. You know, I mean, it should never have gone up. Mm-hmm. It should never have been made. But the situation is so bad, it at least gives us the opportunity now, because there's no excuse for this. There's none. They can't hide from this one. To begin to unravel exactly what has been going wrong, because something serious has gone wrong with the BBC.
Yeah, and by the way, this isn't just like a one-off out of nowhere thing. We're talking decades of this. Right?
For sure. Well, look, there's a report that was never published, because they did a report about 20 years ago into the issues of BBC bias when it came to Israel, and for whatever reason, and we can assume what we know the reason was, that report was never published. It is time that the issue was looked at, that it was independently looked at, that there's transparency, that the BBC is taken to task for this, and we find out exactly what has gone wrong with the BBC that we all are forced to pay for.
Well, that's the big issue, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We are actually forced to pay for it. If people don't like what we're talking about here, they can turn
Switch off.
Don't turn off. But that's the point. It's a choice. Whereas here, we are literally paying for the wages of people, and it's not just this one documentary, at BBC World, there's a massive issue there with BBC Arabic, right?
Yes.
And also just mainstream journalists, and
Yeah.
you see their social media, and you're like, how is this person, is it possible for them to be impartial?
Well, there was a BBC correspondent today. He posted out the propaganda from both sides about the hostages is nauseating, I think he used the word. And you turn around and say, well, hang on a minute. Are you actually comparing the abuse and the torture of Hamas and what they do to the Israeli hostages before they release, that circus, with the fact that we're seeing families reunited after 16 months? He's actually drawing comparisons. Whatever's going on in his head, there's something wrong with it. I really don't. I can't even begin to unravel that one.
And this is who we as a country are turning to for truth, allegedly, but also, of course, the reputation of the BBC is you know, it's lauded across the world as being true. So when they put out information like what we saw with the hospital supposedly being bombed by Israel, and then of course it turns out it wasn't, and supposedly there were hundreds dead, and then there weren't, this spreads across the world. Do you think that the BBC can be saved?
Look, I mean, I'm not anti-BBC at heart, but having been looking at it for so long now, and I don't see how it can be. I just don't see, without actually taking it apart and rebuilding it.
Well, is the issue more like, is it BBC News or the current affairs? I used to work for BBC, by the way. I worked for the comedy department. I loved it there. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. So I'm actually a fan of the BBC, and I believe in the highest ideals that it was set up for. But the problem is, of course, that they have failed with those ideas.
Well, there's an attitude there that if it was more transparent or accountable, more ready to accept its mistakes, I don't think it would be as bad as it is. It's that attitude that has allowed this to develop.
Well, this is it exactly. They mark their own homework when it comes to this. The report that they put out, or the statement that they put out after your findings, was, for me, and I think many people, as telling as the initial failure, right?
Yes.
Because it was just kind of like, well, we didn't know this thing, but we're still going to put it out anyway, but we're just going to put a little statement out on front. And it just showed that they totally failed to see, to acknowledge their failure.
I mean, well, they started backtracking from the very beginning, didn't they? I mean, the first statement they put out was, we had full editorial control, and then it was somebody else's fault. And then, as you know, we found more stuff, and eventually they were forced to pull it down. Yeah. But you're right, look, they're pushing this out, and what it's doing, I mean, because it's so skewed that it's demonising effectively the only liberal democracy in the Middle East. It's a full demonisation process. By extension, it's demonising Zionism and Zionists, and it leaves people like me who are defending them You know, as being I get attacked in the United Kingdom constantly because the BBC are pushing this poison out, and as you say, they're respected across the world, which means the BBC are effectively injecting more anti-Semitism into the veins of this country, and it affects people, just living here. So.
See, well, I should read out. BBC spokesman said, Gaza, How to Survive a War Zone features important stories we think should be told. Those are the experiences of children in Gaza. There have been continuing questions raised about the programme, and in the light of these, we are conducting further due diligence with the production company that made the film. The programme will not be available on iPlayer whilst this is taking place. David, I want to say thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for the work you do. Again, you're just a guy in North London.
Just one guy with a keyboard.
It's insane. But anyway, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.